The edges of the solar system were supposed to feel like home. Instead, as the fleet scanners adjusted to the hauntingly familiar starlight, my pulse tightened, and I felt the chill of countless voids between us and our past. Earth, our shattered, dust-laden birthplace, lay at the center of it all, just beyond Pluto, a silent reminder of our ancient exile. The ping on the comm system crackled through my headset, breaking the silence. "Commander Voss, we're receiving a signal. It's old, very old." I turned to Lieutenant Marcus Wren, who had been monitoring the scanners beside me. His face was pale, eyes fixed on the flickering data. I knew what he saw: coordinates leading back to Earth. A distress signal from over 3,000 years ago. "It shouldn't still be transmitting," Dr. Chen muttered from the back of the bridge, his voice half-whispered, more to himself than to us. We'd left Earth behind as refugees, banished and scattered by a coalition of alien forces who saw humanity as too volatile, too unpredictable. The destruction of Earth was a legend now, a rallying cry etched into every human colony's history books. But to see the signal pulsing in front of us felt surreal. I clenched my jaw. "Prepare the reconnaissance team. We're going down there." The ship's descent was tense. I sat in the cockpit beside Marcus, both of us watching the twisted landscape of Earth's orbit materialize through the viewport. Debris floated around us, pieces of once great structures, ancient satellites reduced to rusting shrapnel. Marcus adjusted our course, eyes scanning the debris field with grim focus. "Hard to believe this was our home," he muttered. "It's like a graveyard up here." 3,000 years, I replied, watching as our sensors mapped out the floating remains. Everything that made us who we were, scattered to the void. The silence grew heavy, broken only by the occasional crackle of Dr. Chen's voice from the rear of the shuttle. "Commander, I'm picking up the source of the signal. It's coming from what's left of an old command bunker near the surface." I glanced at Marcus, who gave a grim nod, adjusting the shuttle's thrusters to bring us closer to Earth's broken crust. The planet was scarred, its once blue oceans and green continents transformed into barren stretches of rust-red and soot-gray. Alien weapons hadn't done this. Nature and time had scorching winds, toxic skies, and nuclear fallout left in the wake of humanity's last stand. As we landed, the ground trembled slightly, the broken remains of what might have once been skyscrapers looming in the distance. Stepping onto the surface, we saw how utterly desolate it was. No trace of life, no sign of nature's resilience. Earth was dead. We moved toward the bunker, a rusted hatch half buried in ash. I nodded to Marcus, who levered it open, revealing a dark staircase that descended into the ground. Inside the bunker, the air was stale, thick with dust. Our flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing walls covered in ancient warnings and posters, cracked and yellowed with age. Messages in old Earth languages urged the last survivors to take shelter, to resist. But who they had resisted, we still didn't know. Dr. Chen scanned the walls, his eyes narrowing at the peeling words. "This bunker was made to withstand heavy attacks, but I'm not seeing any signs of alien weaponry." I frowned. "You're saying Earth's destruction didn't come from the outside?" "Maybe not," Chen replied, trailing his hand along a scorched panel. "This looks like it was self-inflicted, something to do with those who stayed behind." We moved deeper, the flicker of our lights revealing metal racks of abandoned rifles, empty bunk beds, and scattered tablets left by the bunker's inhabitants. They'd left in haste, whatever final purpose they had here unfinished. At the end of the hallway, the signal led us to a communications room. The walls were scarred, consoles and control panels wrecked, as if something or someone had tried to destroy everything here. But in the center of the room stood an old, flickering monitor, its dim green light still pulsing. Dr. Chen approached the console, brushing dust off its screen. "It's encrypted. Give me a moment." Marcus leaned against the wall, the glint of unease in his eyes. 3,000 years, light, and it's still transmitting. This feels wrong." "I know," I said, glancing around at the room's eerie silence. "But whatever this is, it was meant for us." The monitor flickered again, and a voice crackled through the speakers, strained, distorted. It was human, weary but defiant. "This is Major Sato, commander of the Earth Resistance. To any humans who may still be out there, this is your warning. Earth has fallen, and it wasn't just the aliens who did this. The transmission sputtered, garbled static drowning out parts of the message before the voice resumed, more urgent. The alien coalition might be watching the solar system. They knew of humanity's potential, but the truth is we weren't blameless. There were factions among us, people who—" The message crackled again, trailing off. "If you hear this, do not trust what they tell you about our fall. There are dark secrets, things we did to ourselves." Marcus's face was pale. "So, Earth fell because of other humans?" Dr. Chen looked at the console, his face unreadable. "We assumed we were driven out solely by the aliens, but Sato's words imply something else: internal factions, perhaps resistance groups that acted out of desperation. This message was meant for any future human who found it." The silence settled like lead. I could see Marcus wrestling with it, could feel the weight of it in my own chest. We had dedicated our lives to avenging Earth's fall, yet here we were, finding humanity's role in its own demise. I shook my head, stepping back. "We need more information. Chen, download anything you can from this console." As Chen worked, Marcus moved toward an old, dust-coated shelf. His fingers brushed over a faded data tablet, and he tapped it awake. A video flickered to life, a recording from Earth's final defenders. A woman's face appeared, bruised and weary, her eyes hard. "They told us the aliens would save us," she whispered. "But when they exiled us, some of us stayed back to fight. They say it was a noble cause, but the truth was darker. We were fighting ourselves more than the aliens." Sato tried to rally us, to warn us, but even he couldn't see the full picture. If anyone ever hears this, remember, it's not just about what they did to us, it's what we allowed to happen. The recording cut off, leaving Marcus silent, staring at the screen. I felt a chill crawl down my spine. The enemy hadn't been clear-cut, after all. There was a sickness within our own ranks, something darker than we'd imagined. With the download complete, we left the bunker, emerging into the lifeless landscape of Earth. I felt the gravity of each step, the revelation gnawing at me. As we boarded the shuttle, Marcus remained uncharacteristically quiet. We powered up, drifting back into the void, where the wreckage of human satellites and forgotten structures surrounded us like ghosts. "Commander," Chen said from his station, "I found something else in the transmission, a fragment of an alien archive, buried in the last data packet." I raised an eyebrow. "Alien data? Why would that be here?" Chen's fingers moved across his console as he brought up the fragment. Strange symbols, foreign and unsettling, filled the screen. "This archive contains records of the Coalition's dealings with human factions, but the encryption is intricate. It'll take time to decode." "Any guesses on what it might hold?" I asked, knowing he'd already pieced together a theory. Dr. Chen's voice was low. "Best guess? Information about the agreement between humanity's exiles and the Coalition. Possibly details on what went wrong. This data could reveal why we were truly exiled." Marcus, who had been silently listening, finally spoke. "All this time, we thought we'd been wronged by them. But if our own people had a hand in it, does vengeance even make sense anymore?" I clenched my fists, feeling the bitterness in my chest. "We were exiled, Marcus. We lost everything. Even if humanity played a role, the Coalition still condemned us." He looked at me, his expression conflicted. "But if we were responsible, even partly, what's the point in seeking revenge? We're just repeating the cycle." I met his gaze, the weight of his words pressing down on me. I'd spent my life preparing to return, to make the Coalition pay. But now, I could feel doubt chipping away at the conviction I had held for so long. "We'll see what's in that archive," I said, not wanting to linger on the question of vengeance just yet. "If there's truth to be found, we'll uncover it." The shuttle floated silently through Earth's debris field, the alien archive fragment flickering ominously on the screen. Outside, the stars remained distant, cold witnesses to the lost story of Earth. We were humans, shaped by our past, still grappling with the ghosts of a shattered legacy. As the shuttle docked back at the fleet, I looked one last time at the ruined planet below. Earth's final message had reached us haunting, fractured, and incomplete. We would continue, yes, but something had changed in me. Humanity's return wasn't just about revenge anymore, it was about finding the truth. And if the Coalition, or even our own kind, had hidden that truth, then it was time for us to bring it into the light. Galresh was nothing like I'd imagined. It was the galactic heart of the Alien Alliance, one of the most densely populated planets in Coalition space, and, until now, utterly inaccessible to humans. Infiltrating it meant threading through dangers and secrets that could unravel everything. As our small team prepared, I felt the weight of our mission press down hard on me. We'd come because the encrypted alien archive we'd recovered from Earth had revealed something more than a warning. It had revealed a star map, pinpointing Galresh as a nexus of Coalition activity and the site of humanity's exile pact. If any place held the secrets behind our banishment, it was this planet. Our purpose was simple, at least on paper: get in, find the truth, and make it out alive. "Commander Voss, coordinates are locked," Marcus said, his voice low and steady. Even through his helmet visor, I could see the gleam of anticipation and a flicker of doubt. Dr. Chen gave me a curt nod as well, his hands running over the encrypted data crystal we'd brought along. It was our key to accessing the Coalition's hidden history, and I was relying on him to extract the truth once we were within reach of Galresh's archives. "Remember, we're traitors. Simple traitors," I reminded them, though I knew the chances of pulling off the ruse were slim. "We'll find a way to slip into the archives without making a scene." The stars beyond our viewport swirled as we slipped out of warp, and Galresh loomed before us, a sprawling, city-covered planet alive with neon lights and metallic towers that stretched skyward in defiance. It was beautiful in a way I hadn't expected, yet knowing the history beneath its surface made it feel as hostile as any battlefield. Our ship landed on one of Galresh's bustling trade platforms, lost in a sea of merchant vessels, cargo ships, and even a few military cruisers. We were disguised as interstellar traders, hauling crates of rare minerals from one of the outer systems. Marcus and Dr. Chen, cloaked in inconspicuous gray attire that hid our identities, flanked me as we exited the ship. "Let's stick to the plan," I murmured as we joined the throng of traders, laborers, and alien civilians moving through the vast corridors. "Infiltrate the archives, get the intel, and disappear." Dr. Chen, ever the cautious strategist, nodded. "If we're caught, the Coalition security will tear us apart before we even get a chance to speak. We'll need to keep a low profile." The streets of Galresh were an overwhelming labyrinth. Towering structures of alien architecture loomed around us, pulsing with energy fields and lights that cast shifting shadows over the streets. Countless species walked beside us, some familiar from human encounters, others entirely foreign, their bodies moving with strange, fluid rhythms. Our target, an inconspicuous building known as the Archive Nexus, was heavily guarded but hidden in plain sight, a modest facility compared to the skyscrapers that surrounded it. We slipped in with a crowd of bureaucrats and alien dignitaries, the alien security guards barely glancing at us as we blended in with the flow. Once inside, the air grew quieter, colder, as we moved deeper into the archives. A library of information stretched before us, massive data terminals lining the walls, each holding layers of Coalition history and secrets. I felt a thrill mixed with a tremor of dread. Marcus looked over his shoulder as we reached a data console, his hand subtly resting on his sidearm. "They say knowledge is power," he whispered. "Let's hope it doesn't kill us." Dr. Chen inserted the data crystal, his hands moving quickly over the console as he accessed the archive's interface. Alien glyphs flashed across the screen, but Chen was prepared. He had translated parts of the archive before, enough to navigate this Coalition code. "There it is," Chen breathed, a sense of victory mingling with tension as a document appeared on the screen, a historical record titled The Pact of Humanity's Exile. The words were in Coalition Standard, legible to those with the clearance to read it. We all leaned closer, eyes locked on the first lines. It was a transcript from a Coalition Council meeting, dating back 3,000 years. Eli's voice softened as he read, "The Council convenes today to discuss the matter of humanity." The text continued, detailing how representatives from coalition species had debated humanity's fate after witnessing Earth's escalating conflicts. Humanity's technological prowess, resilience, and propensity for destruction had frightened the alien coalition. This council had deemed that humanity posed too great a threat, and so an ultimatum was formed. Then came the shocking part. "They had access to our weapons," Dr. Chen muttered, pointing to the line that confirmed it. "They used our own technology against us." Marcus's fist clenched. "They didn't just drive us out, they fought fire with fire, using what we'd created against us to make sure we could never come back. And we've been cast as the villains in their stories ever since." But as Chen scrolled further, a more sinister truth emerged. A separate file, embedded within the Council's transcript, detailed an initiative called Project Genesis. According to the records, after Earth's fall, the Coalition had captured groups of human survivors and experimented on them, seeking ways to dampen humanity's volatile instincts. "They used humans as test subjects," Chen whispered, horror coloring his voice. "Their own labs, genetic manipulation, psychological tests, even integration trials with alien species." I felt the burn of anger, a slow, seething rage, as the full extent of our people's suffering came into focus. They hadn't just exiled us, they'd stripped us of our dignity, using us as tools to satisfy their twisted curiosities. My hand tightened on my weapon, a dark desire for justice filling my mind. "Enough of this," I said, my voice barely controlled. "Take all of it, Chen. Every last detail." But even as Dr. Chen continued downloading the files, alarms blared across the room. Red lights flashed as the doors locked around us. We froze, instincts sharpening as we realized the gravity of our situation. "They've detected us," Marcus muttered, backing up against the wall, his hand already drawing his weapon. "We need to move, now." We spun around, only to find an alien standing at the entrance, his skin dark blue with mottled patches of silver, his expression a twisted mask of satisfaction. He was a coalition agent, no doubt one of their undercover operatives, perhaps even part of their internal security. "You shouldn't have come here, humans," he hissed, his voice thick with contempt. "Your kind is no longer welcome in this galaxy." I tightened my grip on my blaster, moving to put myself between him and my team. Funny, we were just starting to feel at home. The alien's eyes flickered with a malevolent gleam. "You'll regret those words." With a flick of his hand, a panel on the wall shifted, revealing a series of force barriers that trapped us in place. He advanced, his gaze never leaving mine, the satisfaction of his ambush evident. Chen muttered something under his breath, and I knew he was cursing our luck. But I wasn't about to let this end here. "Marcus, take left," I shouted. In one fluid motion, Marcus darted to the side, drawing the alien's attention just long enough for me to fire. The blaster shot hit the barrier between us, causing it to flicker, weakening just enough to let us push through. I barreled forward, closing the distance and knocking the alien off balance. "Chen, get the data and go," I shouted as I grappled with the alien, wrestling his weapon from his hands. He hissed, slashing at me with an arm blade that cut across my shoulder. The pain burned, but I gritted my teeth, ignoring it as I twisted his arm, forcing him down. "Your kind doesn't deserve to return," he spat, struggling in my grip. "We'll see about that," I replied, landing a final punch to his jaw, knocking him unconscious. I turned to see Marcus and Chen at the console, their faces set in grim determination. "Got it," Chen shouted, holding up a compact drive. "Every file, including the experiments." "Then let's get out of here," I said, grabbing the alien's weapon as a precaution. Navigating Galresh's labyrinthine streets was another battle entirely. Coalition soldiers patrolled every corner, and word of intruders had spread quickly. It was only a matter of time before they found us. The stolen data drive felt like a ticking time bomb in Chen's hand. We ducked down a narrow alley, keeping close to the walls, our breaths shallow. The neon lights of the city flashed overhead, casting eerie colors over the alley. For a moment, it seemed we'd slipped past the worst of it until we heard footsteps behind us. Humans, a grating voice echoed through the alley, the voice of another coalition soldier. He raised a stun weapon, and a half-dozen more emerged from the shadows around him. We exchanged quick glances, no time to speak as we fell into combat stances. Blaster shots rang out, the neon lights casting odd shadows across the soldiers' faces as they advanced. Marcus was quick, ducking and weaving, his blaster finding targets with deadly precision. Chen and I covered him, our shots keeping the soldiers at bay. But the numbers were too high, and they closed in. "Eli, to the left," Marcus shouted. I turned, just in time to dodge a stun blast that would have taken me down. We darted into an old tunnel, barely escaping the last wave of shots. Our breaths were ragged as we sprinted, taking every turn we could, each corner offering a fleeting sense of safety. Finally, we reached the end of the tunnel, bursting into an industrial district packed with supply crates and transport vehicles. "This way," I gestured, guiding us to a loading platform where we could blend in among the workers. We quickly slipped onto a cargo hauler, crouching low as the transport took off, carrying us away from the soldiers in pursuit. Back on our ship, the silence felt like a reprieve, but the weight of what we'd uncovered was heavy in the air. I looked at Marcus and Chen, their faces lit by the dim glow of the data drive, each of us grasping the gravity of what we'd learned. Marcus finally broke the silence. "The Alliance after all this? I almost wonder if revenge is enough. These experiments, the manipulation, they've buried the truth. They've buried our people's suffering." Chen nodded. "It's beyond revenge, Lai. They've tried to erase us from history. But we have the proof now, proof of what they did." I met their gazes, the fire in my chest returning, stronger and sharper. "Then let's make sure everyone in the galaxy knows the truth." The stars seemed dimmer around Nova Station, as if the outpost's cold presence had leached the light from nearby space. It loomed ahead, an immense fortress of interconnected rings, gleaming pylons, and fortified observation decks, all surrounded by a halo of weaponry. Nova Station was the Coalition's most advanced outpost, a behemoth of defense that kept its allies in line and its enemies at bay. Its primary weapon, a planet cracker capable of annihilating entire worlds, was something we'd only heard rumors of before today. Now, we had the proof. We'd slipped through the outer system under the guise of a supply ship, our forged credentials barely passing the Coalition's scrutiny. But we weren't here to blend in. We were here to end this. "This is it, Eli," Dr. Chen said, his voice tense over the comms. "If we fail, there won't be another shot." Beside me, Marcus was silent, his face set, but his eyes carried a shadow I hadn't seen before. He was uneasy, and I could hardly blame him. We were at the razor's edge now, and what lay ahead was nothing less than deciding humanity's future. The alien coalition had exiled us, kept us fragmented, and reduced us to wandering vagabonds in the galaxy. But if we succeeded here, that would change. Nova Station's internal docks were bustling with activity as we slipped through, blending among the crew and traders offloading cargo. The place was filled with Coalition forces' high-ranking officials, guards, and officers from a dozen species. The tension in the air was thick. I knew they sensed a shift in the galaxy's balance as well, though none suspected how close we were to tipping it. Marcus, Dr. Chen, and I wore the simple uniforms of low-level technicians, and a few glances thrown our way quickly turned back to the cargo. As we moved deeper into the station, the enormity of the task hit me. This was the seat of Coalition power, and we were 3 humans surrounded by a legion of soldiers and one deadly weapon. We reached the station's heart, the control nexus, an enormous circular chamber pulsing with panels of alien technology and glowing displays. From here, we could disable or control the station's weapon, rerouting the safety locks that protected the Coalition's precious deterrent. Dr. Chen immediately went to work, his fingers moving quickly over the console, inputting commands and siphoning through layers of encrypted security. "I can get us partial control of the weapon," he murmured. "It's heavily safeguarded, but there's an old security vulnerability embedded in their code, part of an oversight from their last upgrade. We could use it to either trigger the weapon or destroy it entirely." Marcus stared at him, his brow furrowed. "Destroy it, as in destroy this entire station?" Chen nodded grimly. "The flaw is linked to the core reactor. It's a design flaw they must have ignored in their arrogance, thinking no one would ever get this far. But if we activate it, Nova Station will be reduced to space dust within minutes." The words hung heavy in the air. Detonating Nova Station would be a death sentence for everyone on board, including us, and it would throw the Coalition into chaos. Marcus finally spoke, his voice edged with doubt. "So, what's the plan, Eli? Take control of the weapon and start a war, or destroy the station and cripple their power for good?" I met his gaze, sensing the conflict within him. "The plan," I said slowly, "is to hit them where it hurts. The Coalition exiled us, turned us into the galaxy's pariahs. If we don't stop them, they'll do worse when they find us again. With control of this weapon, we can make them understand we're not their scapegoat anymore." Marcus's face darkened. "And what then, Eli? We obliterate half the galaxy to prove our strength. Are we here to repeat the very cycle that got us exiled?" His question cut deeper than I cared to admit. I hadn't thought this far beyond revenge and retribution, and hearing Marcus' voice, it brought back my own doubts. I opened my mouth to answer, but Dr. Chen broke the silence. "Eli, look at what we've seen. The Coalition has fractured, struggling to maintain control over its own members. We could use that instability to form alliances of our own. There might be a way to end this that doesn't rely on mass destruction." Marcus nodded. "We didn't come all this way just to do to them what they did to us. If we're here to build a future, then maybe that future shouldn't be one of devastation." I struggled with their words, a mix of anger and frustration clawing up inside me. But I couldn't deny that they had a point. We weren't the monsters they believed us to be, nor the monsters they'd made us out to be. I took a steadying breath, nodding at last. "Let's find another way." Chen's fingers flew over the console as he rerouted control of the weapon, disengaging its firing capabilities and leaving it essentially neutralized. The alarm that went off a moment later told me our actions hadn't gone unnoticed. I readied my blaster, Marcus at my side, as the sounds of boots pounding down the corridor drew closer. "Eli," Chen warned, his voice low and urgent. "They're going to breach that door any second." He was right. We'd come too far to let a squadron of Coalition guards stop us now. We took defensive positions, blasters at the ready, as the doors slid open. Shots rang out, echoing off the walls as we exchanged fire with the Coalition guards. The acrid smell of plasma filled the air as we pressed forward, Chen covering our flank while Marcus and I pushed them back. The firefight was brutal, and our cover dwindled as we drove deeper into the station. Coalition soldiers shouted commands, the rapid patter of their alien language almost lost in the barrage of blaster fire. We'd taken out 3/4 of the squad before backup arrived, forcing us into a tactical retreat down a side corridor. We were running out of time. "Nova Station's self-destruct sequence is set," Chen said, catching his breath. "It'll blow the core in 5 minutes. We need to get to the docking bay now." The clock was ticking as we sprinted down the labyrinthine corridors. Every turn brought us closer to the docking bay and our escape route, but it also felt like the Coalition's forces were multiplying. Their shouts and footsteps echoed down every hall, their presence an unrelenting reminder that they weren't about to let us go easily. Finally, we burst into the docking bay, an open expanse where Coalition ships were docked. Chen's fingers moved frantically over the control panel to unlock our own ship. But just as the airlock hissed open, a figure stepped out from behind a stack of cargo crates, his blaster aimed squarely at us. He was a high-ranking Coalition officer, his gaze cold and unyielding as he sized us up. "You think you can destroy our station and live to tell the tale, humans?" he spat, his face twisting with hatred. I raised my weapon, matching his glare. "You left us no choice." The officer laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "Your kind never knew your place. It was mercy that spared you once, but mercy has its limits." The hatred in his words mirrored the anger I'd felt since the day we intercepted Earth's last message, and I nearly squeezed the trigger. But Marcus's voice cut through my rage, calm and steady. "Eli, don't. This isn't the legacy we want." The officer's taunts, the rage that had fueled me, it all faded in that moment. I lowered my weapon, giving Marcus a nod. "You're right. It's time we chose a different path." Without another word, we turned and boarded our ship, sealing the airlock as Chen started the engines. The Coalition officer watched, his expression a mix of disbelief and fury as we lifted off, escaping just as Nova Station's timer reached its end. The explosion was cataclysmic. From the viewport, we watched as the entire structure of Nova Station buckled, then imploded in a flash of brilliant light, fragments of its superstructure scattering across the void. The shockwave rippled out, sending our ship rocking, and then all was silent once more. Dr. Chen, Marcus, and I sat in the cockpit, staring at the wreckage of the Coalition's greatest stronghold. It was a sight that would reverberate through the galaxy. Nova Station's destruction marked a turning point, a signal that humanity had returned, not as conquerors, but as beings determined to survive and rebuild. I broke the silence. "The Coalition will come for us." "They might," Chen said, "but they're fractured, their power weakened. And we have their secrets now, their pacts, their betrayals. The galaxy will know the truth, and they'll have a choice." Marcus leaned forward, a glint of hope in his eyes. "And so do we, Eli. We can lead humanity, yes, but we can also build something new. Something that doesn't repeat the sins of the past." He was right. In that moment, the vengeance that had driven me for so long faded, replaced by something else, something brighter. The truth had set us on this path, but it would be our choices, our actions, that defined humanity's future. As we plotted a course back to our fleet, I felt a weight lift, replaced by the resolve to build a legacy beyond revenge. Humanity had returned, and we would not be forgotten. But more than that, we would forge a future that was ours, a future of resilience, unity, and hope. The galaxy wouldn't just remember us for what we'd lost. It would know us for what we would build.